Tonight, I want to talk. I want to talk about systems. Systems, and pretty good systems. And I think all of us are really good at systems. And the systems I'm talking about are the religious system. And by religious, I'm not religious. Religion can be an awesome thing, okay, but it can also be something that you get stuck in. Right, that kind of muddies the waters. That takes you away from the original purpose and intention. And so we find ourselves in systems all the time, back and forth. And so tonight I want to talk about systems, and I want to share some verses from Jesus during his Sermon on the Mount. And just for some context, so Jesus shows up, he's baptized, he's tempted in the wilderness, he conquers that, he comes back in the power of the Holy Spirit, and he begins to start his ministry. And he begins to do all these crazy things. He begins to heal. It says every kind of sickness, every kind of disease. He starts to preach in synagogues, wherever people will listen, and he starts to call disciples to follow him. And it's here that he invites men to follow him up a mountain. And he starts this Sermon on a Mount. So you got these multitudes starting to hear, the word spreading, they're following him. And he takes them up a mountain, and it's the Sermon on the Mount. It's Matthew 5, 6, 7. And when you look at this, like, what's the point? What's the goal of the Sermon on the Mount? And for me, one of the main points is Jesus, he uses this kind of section here. These words really are meant to correct wrong thinking. They're meant to right the ship, to right the perspective, to bring people from a system to a system. And, you know, he challenges them. He introduces a standard that actually is elevated to a standard of the heart. And he introduces these words which are super hard, super challenging, super confrontational in our day, conflicting at times. And, it's things like, you've heard it said, but I say this. You have to understand who he's showing up, who he's speaking to, people that thought they were going the right way, thought they were doing the right thing, following a system that they thought was leading them to the right place. And so Jesus is saying, you've heard it said this, but I'm saying this. He's introducing this standard. And he raises the standard. And for me, I think about the standard being raised, being set in front of them. And I picture me playing with my little boy on our living room carpet and setting this ball out in front of him. All right, he's almost the age where he's crawling. He's almost the age where he started crawling totally on his own. And he struggles and struggles. He hits the ball, but he hits it and it goes even further, So he's got to try again, and eventually gets upset, frustrated, angry, starts crying, and you got to help him out, right? But there's this standard that we're aiming for. And there's this ball out in front of us. Jesus is kind of putting in front of us that are you going to chase after it? Are you going to strive? Are you going to try for the system he's trying to introduce? And so why is he bringing this? Why is he introducing this? And for me, it's because Jesus cares about the heart. He cares about the heart. He wants to take it past this religious structure, this system, and he wants to bring it deeper into the heart. He wants to elevate it. Past a system of just religious observance that left an inward void, okay? An inward void that only Jesus can fill, that he wants to correct. And so, in worship tonight, I'm sure that some of us were following this system of worship, right? Standing up, singing the songs, but not really connected to it, not really engaged with it. And some of us were actually engaged, and there was a depth to the worship. There was a connection with Jesus in that worship, right? And so even in the simple thing of just going to church and following the system doesn't mean that we're Christian, right? It means that we're churchgoers. But when we actually enter and we actually engage, when we actually go deep into this connection with Jesus and he lives inside of us and we pursue this partnership with him, now we're entering into something much better than just a system, just a religious structure. And so, Jesus is very challenging. He's very... I don't know the right word. He challenges the leaders in their day. He's harsh, right? What are some of the things he says about the Pharisees and the leaders in their day? What are some of the names that he calls them? Hypocrites, broods of vipers, blind guides, right? He's very hard on them. And for example, I want to go to Matthew 5:20. He says this during the Sermon on the Mount. He says, "For I say to you that unless your righteousness surpasses that of the scribes and the Pharisees, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven." That's pretty harsh, huh? And it was probably shocking for them in the day to hear that because they look at these guys and they go, surely if anybody is entering the kingdom of heaven, it's these guys. And Jesus is saying, I tell you, unless your righteousness surpasses that of these guys. Why is that? Because they're trying to earn it by observance to a system, a structure that just changes from the outward appearance, okay? And Jesus wants to elevate it past that, and he wants to go deep. He wants to go inside. He's saying, no, they're putting their faith in a system, but they're not putting their faith in me. And so unless you have faith in me, unless you follow me, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven. And so Jesus comes to heal wrong thinking. He comes to right the ship. He comes to bring right perspective. And so I found myself over the last week really chewing on words in this section, but specifically drawn to Matthew 6, verses 5 to 13. We're going to go through them here. It's the Lord's Prayer is in there. Very familiar stuff. But I just want to dive in this a little bit. Would you guys go with me? All right. Let's go Matthew 6. Let's start in verse 5. So again, Jesus is talking. He says, when you pray, say, when you pray, you are not to be like the hypocrites. Say hypocrites. For they love to stand and pray in the synagogues and on the street corners so that they may be seen by men. Truly, I say to you, they have their reward in full. But you, when you pray, go into your inner room, close your door, and pray to your Father who is in secret. And your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. You can stop there. So Jesus says, when you pray, right? He expected his followers to pray. He expected his followers, his disciples, to pray. You know, so what does he mean by that? What is prayer? I would propose to you, prayer is it's not just coming before Jesus, before God, and stating a list of our needs, of our desires, of our wish list, right? Prayer is actually this communion. It's actually this conversation, this dialogue with God, where it's this back and forth, and it's really more built on a foundation of listening from him than it is just saying, I need this, Jesus, right? Prayer is really this intimate conversation, this intimate connection, and it could be all day long. It's not just standing up in streets. And so, you know, he's coming against these guys, and he's saying, do not be like the hypocrites. Do not. So hypocrite, the word hypocrite, actually what it means is actor, stage player, and pretender. Do not be like the actors, the pretenders. And he is referencing directly to the scribes and Pharisees. Do not be like them who are acting the part of a holy person, but in fact are not. You know, he's saying they stand on the street corners, they stand in the synagogues, they exalt themselves looking down at the people around them in places of recognition, synagogues, places of prayer, so that they can be seen by men. They cared more about the appearance of what man saw of them than they did about the sincerity in their heart of God. And so they actually used God as a tool to impress people. They used God as a tool to impress the men around them. And so what did Jesus say? They've received their reward in full. The praise of men was their reward that they received. It wasn't praise from the Father. It wasn't praise from God. It was praise from men. This is your reward, and you've received it in full. And so verse 6, he's saying, choose humility. Get alone with God. Go into your room, your secret place with the Father. Don't pursue places to be seen, recognized by people, but pursue that place to be seen by God, where it's you and him. Does that mean you go home and just go into your closet, shut the door, and pray? Maybe for some of you. But again, it's a matter of the heart, right? Jesus is going after the heart. What's your heart in it? And so, you know, many times we read Jesus went and got alone with the Father, right? He withdrew himself to be alone. He did not pursue the places to be esteemed by men, to receive praise from man because of his long prayers, his lofty prayers. Look at me. He wasn't seeking their recognition. He was seeking just to be with the Father, the intimacy with the Father. And so let's go on to verses 7 and 8 here. And when you are praying, do not use meaningless repetition as the Gentiles do, for they suppose that they will be heard for their many words. So do not be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you ask him. Pretty good, huh? Don't use thoughtless repetition. The word basically means blah, blah, blah. Don't use long-winded words, right? Do not babble. Don't say the same thing over and over and over and over again. He's saying, as the Gentiles do. And he's basically making a reference to those that would worship Baal and also the Pharisees, but those that believe that if they prayed for hour after hour after hour, that their many, many, many words, their many, many, many prayers is what would gain them the ear of God. It would gain them favor, it would gain them an answer from God. And Jesus is saying, no, it's not about how many words you use. It's not about the vain repetition. It's not about the recognition from people of how eloquent you can speak and how, many words you can pray in front of people. It's about your heart. It's about your heart. And so Jesus is wanting us to get away from this system, this failed system, right? That actually did result in behavior modification, but it didn't produce the fruit that comes from the Holy Spirit. Didn't produce the fruit that comes from an inward transformation, right? It came from just seeking glory of man over glory of God. And so Jesus isn't impressed with that. And so you go, man, what impresses Jesus? What impresses Jesus? The humility of the heart. The humility of the heart gets his attention. The recognition of him, the putting him above myself, the drawing low, the going low in servitude, right? That grabs the attention of Jesus. Are we seeking the things that grab the attention of the King? Or are we seeking these positions, these things of honor that, actually don't really impress him all that much? Even if man esteems it, man values it, but if he's not impressed, is it worth pursuing? If he's not impressed, is it worth doing? And so he goes down into this, section of verses that have been used for centuries that we all know so well, and let's just go over it. Matthew 6:9-13 says what? Pray then in this way, our Father who is in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our debts as we also forgiven our debtors. And do not lead us into temptation, but deliver us from evil. And they throw some versions, translations have this, for yours is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen. How many have ever prayed that? Everybody? How many of us have prayed that with our heart not really engaged? Just as a system, as a religious observance. And I'll be honest, this week when I was going through these verses, this first verse, our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. This is the verse that kept going through my mind over and over and over again. My Father. What is that invitation? I was blown away. I was just chewing on that. My Father in heaven. I have a Father in heaven. I've been invited into a position. I've been invited into a relationship where I can actually have a Father in heaven. And I love worship tonight. It was all about the Father. It was all about His glory, Him being holy, us worshiping Him, us exalting Him. Did you guys notice that? Maybe now you're thinking about it. You're like, oh yeah, that's true. But it was all about Him, drawing attention to Him. It wasn't drawing attention to us. It was all about, let's worship Him, the one who is holy. Let's worship Him, the one who deserves to be exalted. Let's worship Him, who's the worthy one, who's the holy one. My Father in heaven, I think about that. This is a term that is an intimate thing. And it's something that it scares some of us, but it's an uncommon word that was used in their day because it was so intimate. And are we willing to grasp the magnitude of what we're being invited into with that? And I think if we read that verse and we accept it, we go, my Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Holy are you. Awesome are you. Do you think that should change how we live our life? If we just had that one verse, my Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Should that change the way that we live our Christianity? Should that change the way that we live day in and day out? And I kept chewing on this week. My Father in heaven. You are my Father in heaven. You see me. You are good. You're my good Father. You're not like earthly fathers. You are perfect. You are holy. I'm in awe of you. What would happen if we just believed this, just that verse alone? We're drawn to the holiness of God, the splendor of God, His majesty. We use all these big terms, but if you think about it, how true is it? He's majestic, the Creator. We look around, it's like when I was a boy, my favorite thing to do when I get home at night would be to walk up my driveway and just look at the stars. Because I love that feeling of being so small. I didn't know what it was at the time, but looking back, it's like I love that feeling of that there was so much more beyond just me. And it made me feel small. And in some ways, it almost made me feel insignificant, but it's because God is so big. And then you realize what He's invited us into. And you realize that He wants to be your Father. You realize He wants to be your Father in heaven. The one who designed you and made you. And so Jesus is inviting us into something much bigger than just a religious system. Something much bigger than just ourselves. And so as I'm speaking these words and as we're going over these verses, I can't help but this question comes up in my mind and says, yeah, but who do you relate to? Do you relate to the religious leaders? To the Pharisees? Do you relate to the Gentiles, the ones who just want to observe the religious traditions for the sake of appearing as though you have it all together? For the sake of appearing as though you really, are a believer? That people would see you and go, oh yeah, that person's good. They must be saved. Do you relate with the ones that Jesus is after? The ones that Jesus is seeking after? The ones that He's calling deeper, like Steve on Sunday, the depth that He's calling us into. And it was Sunday that actually shifted some things for me, because I was sitting there during Steve's altar call, ministry time in the first service, and we just having us picture Jesus. And I can't remember the exact question that he had us ask, but I'm talking to Jesus, and this prayer that always comes out of my lips is just, I want you to be the most real thing. Be the most real thing. And by that I mean just be present, be God, be big in my life, be you, Jesus. Be the most real thing in my life. And I'm connecting with Him and I'm seeing Him, and I wasn't ready for what He said next, but he says, Ryan, I'm not convinced. I'll be honest with you guys tonight, right? Ryan, I'm not convinced. I was like, what? What do you mean? I wasn't expecting that. You're not convinced that I want you to be the most real thing in my life? And then he says, because you're not convinced. You're not convinced. It took me a second to kind of come around to what that meant. And it just, what? I believe in you. I've served you for a lot of years now. He says, but because you're not convinced. He says you're still holding close the disappointments, the confusion, the doubt from the past, the letdowns where you've perceived that I haven't shown up. And he even went further and he said, you want the experience to validate the truth that you say you believe. I was like, oh, geez. What do we do here? And it was Him just revealing some things in me from years past. It was right. There was disappointment. There was letdown. There were moments where I felt that He didn't show up. There were moments that I've received these amazing prophetic words about these powerful encounters you're going to have with God, and it's going to look this way, and it's going to change the very DNA of who you are. I've received words like that. And so my mind's like, whoa, what's this going to look like, And then, it didn't match up to what I thought it was going to look like. And so, let down, disappointed. And I found myself just repenting before Him. Jesus, I am so sorry. I have let confusion in. I'm so sorry I've let doubt in. I'm so sorry that I've doubted you. And, I found myself at the end of this just, Jesus, if I never feel you again, if I never see you again, if I never hear you again, if I never encounter you again, then what you did on that cross is enough for me. then what you did over there was enough for me. And I found myself connected with Jesus just in that moment. If I never, then what you did, you're still enough for me. And looking back over the last week, realizing that as I let confusion in, that as doubt, and even stuff behind the scenes I wasn't even aware of, but that over time, that what that does is it actually pulls you towards this system of just religious action, because my heart's not connected. That I lose sight of just this intimacy with Jesus, the action that follows faith, that follows intimacy, that follows obedience, and it becomes just this kind of system of, I know I love you, let me do this, And things still happen, things still get produced, but the depth at what Jesus is inviting us to, the depth of what he invites me to, is I find myself then operating in a different system. When he's saying, what I care about is your heart. What I care about is I want to be your Father in heaven. I want to be your Father in heaven. I want to be the one that you wake up in the morning just so in love with, the one that you can't wait to just live for, to give your next breath for, to give your next dollar for, the one that sees you, knows you, created you. And so, like I said, I found myself just in a moment of like, what do I do? Just walking blind in some ways of, didn't even realize it. But coming back to the fact of, Jesus, I know that you are who you say you are. And I'm with you. And so even today, my prayer has just been, Jesus. Just Jesus. Because if your heart's in it, it doesn't really matter how many words you say. If your heart's in it, it doesn't really matter how long you spend in that. It's Jesus. And what I mean is just Jesus. Just be you. Jesus. Forgive me for where I've missed it. Forgive me for where I need to be steered, where I've missed it. And so tonight, that's honestly what I want to bring up. Is my heart is Jesus is saying, there's two systems, and we flip-flop a lot. And what is he calling you to? What is he stirring up inside of you? That as you sit there, that as you hear just the words that I'm speaking, that Jesus hopefully speaking through me, that you're connecting with something, that he's revealing something. Is there a place in you where he's like, let's just correct this a little bit. Let's get back to the heart. Let's get back to the you and me. Let's get back to what really matters. Are we just seeking to change our behavior? Are we just seeking to please people around us by doing the right thing? Doing the right thing is awesome. We can't stop doing that. But are you doing the right thing from a place of just that heart-to-heart connection, from that motivation there? That changes your behavior, that promotes faith in your life, that promotes power in your life. And so, if any of this is just resonating with you, if any of this is speaking to you tonight, then, we will have people to pray up here with you. But I want to just give you an opportunity where you're at right now, just in your seat, to deal with Jesus one-on-one. To deal with him one-on-one, to be willing to look at your life and to say, man, is there places where I've let confusion in, where I've let doubt kind of trickle into my heart, or where I've started to see myself go more towards this structure that doesn't really breed anything? Where do I need to kind of have my course corrected? Whether it's a little or a lot, or it's none at all. Are you involving him? And I think there's even more that we can involve him. There's even more that we can go after tonight. There's deeper places we can go tonight with Jesus. And so if that's you, if you feel, then let's just spend the next moments. Let's spend the next minutes just seeking after him.
Thanks for watching the Father's House Orville YouTube channel, but don't stop there. We'd love you to subscribe to our channel so that you never miss a live service or a video. Help us spread the message of Jesus by sharing this video with your friends. You can also support the Father's House financially by clicking the Give button. Thanks again for watching today, and we hope to see you again soon.